It's time for the chip race.
We are joined now by WSOP main event presenter, 888 ambassador and 2009 Irish Open runner-up, one of the most famous, most recognisable and respected people in the game of poker. Cara Scott, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on the show.
Well, that was such a nice introduction. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you both.
You'll be in the thick of it at the WSOP, I think, when this show goes out. But I wanted to start off by going back to your beginnings, if that's okay.
Oh boy.
I know, yeah. Something which I'm not sure many people know about you, and I'm sure they probably wouldn't guess because of what I naturally are in front of the camera, is how you grew up on a farm in a remote, freezing cold part of Alberta, Canada, and your childhood was largely spent on that farm playing games and reading voraciously. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what that was like?
Sure. Yeah, it is very different from the way my life has turned out. And it does kind of make me sit back on my heels sometimes and wonder how on earth I got here, and I mean, I live in Slovenia in Europe as this Canadian person, and I work in television and poker, and I get to go to all these amazing places. But I did actually, grow up on a very small farm. It wasn't like an industrial farm at all. It was basically more of a subsistence farm. We had a cow for milk, and we had chickens for eggs, and we had a huge garden so that we could grow, vegetables and fruit. And my dad went hunting every autumn so that we would have meat. And it was a pretty incredible way to grow up. We didn't have really running water until I was a teenager. It's hard to remember back that far, but I'd say I was like 14, maybe 13, 14, 15 years old before we had an indoor toilet for the first time. So yeah, and it was cold. It was really cold.
And after high school, you went to university in England, where you did a teaching degree and a linguistics degree. Then you moved to London, I think at the age of 24, and became a teacher at what I think a BBC documentary referred to as the worst school in England. What was that like?
That was pretty incredible for me. Because even when I did my education, my teaching practice, it was all, still very Canadian schools, and it was all sort of what I understood. So first of all, I moved to England as the first time I actually left the country. And that was a kind of a big culture shock for me, not just living in England, but living in London, which was, for a small town girl, the way I was, especially, London is massive. So working at schools there, I didn't have a lot in common at first that I could see with a lot of the kids. Their school experience was so vastly different to what my school experience had been. So teaching was, it was a challenge. And then being at that school in particular, they'd closed it down, and it was like, they were using it as a fresh start school is what they called it, because they'd shut it down, gotten rid of all of the teachers, which is a terrible thing to do, and then tried to reopen it as like a beacon school, so that people could look up to it. And it just failed miserably. And it failed not just, emotionally, but like technically. It was actually a failing school. We failed our Ofsted. A lot of the teachers, like something like 70% maybe of them, quit by the end of the first year. Just were like, no, we can't. This isn't a school. So that was pretty intense, yeah. I felt like I was in over my head. A lot of us were first-year teachers, too. They had this idea that for some reason, all of these brand new, fresh teachers would come in, and it would be like some sort of movie, where you go in and inspire all the kids. Well, no, you can't. We had no idea what we were doing. We were like flailing around trying to do just basic discipline in the classrooms, getting them to sit down. I think the first couple of weeks that the school was open, we didn't even have a proper schedule. So every single day we'd get a new schedule. It'd be like, oh, those 3 classes that you taught history to yesterday, well, you don't teach them anymore. Now you're teaching religious education to a completely different year. And so, the kids they got the worst end of that stick, absolutely.
I've been going backward and forwards doing it for most of my adult life, and it seems to me that the education system, in common with a lot of things in the UK, other aspects of government-funded systems, suffered by the political changes, say, that came out of the Thatcher era, because in some ways, schools are almost seen as a band-aid. You guys have to deal with these very underprivileged kids, but they have much wider social problems, and there's there's very little you can do. That must be pretty frustrating.
It is. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I learned by being a teacher that first year in that first school, that was my first experience of education, really working or not working, was that we actually had to shut the school down for a week because there was kind of a riot, and people were hurt and things went very badly wrong. So we shut the school down, and they brought in these educators to kind of talk to us all about how to do what they called positive discipline. And they said one of the things you need to understand is for some of these kids, their behaviors, the way that they're acting out, which is difficult in your classrooms, which is making your life and your job hard, these are coping strategies for their life that work. They're not appropriate for the classroom, but they're things that they have learned how to do to live in their situation. And that was like a real wake-up call for me. You can't go into these schools and think you're going to be this kind of savior type
Michelle
person.
Pfeiffer.
Exactly. Like, it's so yuck. It's so gross, isn't it? And you think, no, these are people. These are small, young people, and they deserve an education, and we're not giving it to them. And also, they do have all these other, they have so many issues socially, and like you say, because of government funding, a lot of it, that we're trying to just do something where the rest of their life isn't being addressed, poverty, inequality, all of those things. It was a shocking, eye-opening experience for me, as where I came from.
Well, from that anyway, it seems like such a weird to segue into anything else, but you have talked in the past about the roundabout way. I guess you got into poker, which is what you are most famous for, of course. You were initially a Muay Thai boxer, and you were offered a gig presenting a show about martial arts, I think specifically on Muay Thai. And from there was a backgammon show, I think, and that eventually led to Poker Night Live, where you were enrolled as their presenter. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about those shows?
Yeah, that was kind of wild. I mean, when I quit teaching, I was still doing substitute or supply teaching. So I would, phone up in the morning at 7 a.m. and find out an empty school where they needed me to go and teach. And if I wasn't doing that, I was in the gym training, because I really loved Muay Thai. It was something that, I've always been really fascinated by martial arts. Growing up, martial arts movies were like a really big part of my childhood. So I was spending a lot of time kind of doing those things, and one of my trainers told me about a job where he said, you used to be a teacher, you can clearly speak to people, maybe you should go for this presenting job because I think you'd be really good for it. And I thought, well, I have no work and I do need money, and I guess I could try this kind of weird thing. And so I did, and I ended up getting that job, and it was on Channel 5 in England. And I actually was one of the producers of the show as we went on. So I got production experience. I ended up actually as one of the producers of a martial arts film. Because of working on that, I'd met a bunch of people. We decided to make a martial arts film, which we did. And that was really exciting. It actually got like proper distribution. It's terrible, so don't look it up. But it was kind of fun to do. And then, somehow I got a backgammon job. The Poker Channel saw my work on this backgammon show and then asked me to come in and kind of be the novice voice on this TV show that they had, where you kind of 4 hours through the middle of the night, a couple of people sitting at a desk with a locked off camera talk about online poker. It's quite a way to learn the game. It really was.
Yeah, I can imagine. And on the backgammon show, High Stakes Backgammon, you worked with Paul McGreal, the man who created the concept of M in poker, later popularised by Dan Harrington. McGreal's certainly no slouch at the poker table either. Did you ever talk poker with him?
At that point, I wasn't even thinking about poker, so we never got a chance to talk about it. We just talked about backgammon, and he kind of helped me figure out the game of backgammon in a large way. We actually played together at the World Championship doubles of backgammon in I forget where it was, like Monte Carlo or something. I basically just rolled. So, and he would explain to me why he was making the move, and then I could sometimes move the checkers. But it was pretty cool. And then I actually bumped into him just randomly in the halls of the Rio maybe 5 years ago. I'm not even sure how long ago. And he was like, "So I see you play poker now." And I was like, yeah. How you doing? Quack, quack.
Yeah, I remember the quack quack. The very first World Series I was at, I heard this going off in a few tables away from quack quack, and somebody told me it was Paul McGreal, and I didn't know whether to believe them or
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Well, Cara, from there in 2007, 2008, you were presenting for Sky Poker and the EPT, but I think it's fair to say that was also a bit of a purple patch for you as a player in that kind of period, '08 and even into '09. You won the Party Poker Sports Stars Championship or Challenge. You made a deep run in WSOP main, of course, which you got loads of coverage for. And you came second, which we all remember you in Ireland, of course, second to Christy Johansson for over 300k at the Irish Open. How did it feel to crush during that period of time? And also, how loud was sixth place finisher William Kassouf back in those days?
Well, first of all, William was not as loud as he is now. I think that he probably would agree with that too. He was very slow though. The final table was really painfully slow. And when we got down to 2 tables, I think they had to have someone with a clock standing beside him to make sure that he wasn't wasting time. It was pretty painful. But yeah, it's always nice to see Will. It's funny that we go back like that far. And yeah, it felt amazing to crush. Are you kidding? My gosh, it was amazing. Like that feeling of kind of knowing what you're doing and feeling comfortable in the game, it was a lot of it down to the fact that I was hitting a really great run. Obviously, I was on the good side of variance, but it felt amazing, so it didn't matter. And yeah, the game's moved on a lot, and I spend most of my time now working in television, and for the last, gosh, I don't even know how long, 5, 6, 7 years, I've been living in areas where progressively I've not been able to play online poker. And so it's definitely affected my game, I gotta say. And I'm glad that I make my living out of broadcasting now. But I'm really glad I won all that money when I did.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, it's interesting talking about Will there. I'm at the World Series at the moment, and I saw it firsthand, the effect of the so-called new Kassouf rule. Somebody at my table was clocked yesterday, and the tournament director came over, spoke to the dealer, and then said, "You've got 10 seconds to act." So the old minute, and then clock. The next time clock was called, the guy got 5 seconds. So. And clock was literally insta-called when it was on him because the chip leader felt that he was stalling for the money. So they're really enforcing the rule now to move the game along. It feels they might have gone a bit too far. But you also had a long association, I think, with Party from maybe 2009 to 2015 or so. What were the highlights for you during that period?
I got to do a lot of different television work with them, and that was pretty cool. Like, for the first couple of years, maybe the first 3 years that we were together, it was just this constant stream of like we did the big game, we did the Premier League, the European Open, the World Women's Open, like just so many different things. And okay, so they were all basically the same show, but with different players. But beside the point. It was nice to actually really feel like I was figuring out. Oh, I'm going to say figuring out my craft, but then that sounds kind of wanky, doesn't it? But yeah, figuring out my craft, in front of the camera. And I liked that. I liked being able to kind of stretch myself and go to these cool places and yeah, figure out how to be a TV broadcaster kind of on the fly.
Well, it was kind of a golden era for poker on TV. I guess post Black Friday, obviously, that all got less and less and less. But it's no surprise then that during that time, as you were wankily honing your craft, you end up getting picked up by, I guess, the best show for poker on TV, which was High Stakes Poker. Certainly, I think any poker player worth their salt used to tune into that every week religiously. I'm just such a huge fanboy of Gabe Kaplan. He sort of goes way back into the history of poker. You know, he's right there with Stu Unger even in those photographs and the really old stuff. So like amazing to work with him and obviously AJ. What was that like for you? Were you almost like recognizing that you were suddenly now becoming part of like really mainstream poker now? I know you were in the UK and Europe maybe, but really like poker is in America a much different animal, and now you are part of that machine.
Yeah, absolutely. When I decided to move to the States and try to work in television there, it was a big choice for me. I had been actually working with Stars before that on the EPT, and we were talking about me renewing my contract with them. And, I'd just done really well in the World Series, and I'd had that great result in the Irish Open. and I wanted to do more television, and the EPT was a show that I really liked working on, but I mean, I just felt like I couldn't. There were a lot of reasons that I didn't renew my contract with them, but one of them was so that I could move to the States and try to do something that was, yeah, like you say, more mainstream in North America. And I was really lucky that Maury Eskandani from Poker Productions took a chance on me. Like, I didn't harass him for a meeting, but I pushed pretty hard. Like, I'd never really done that before. And I had this really great friend who's a British poker player, Nick Wellfall, and he'd been saying to me, he was like, you need to set up a meeting. You need to set up a meeting. If you want to do anything in your career, this is who you have to talk to. And he kind of pushed me into doing it. And I'm always going to be grateful for that. Because I remember sitting in like one of this coffee shop in the Bellagio talking to Maury, who is, beloved. He's an amazing guy, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And he didn't know who I was. Clearly, he kind of looked into who I was, but he just didn't really know. And so I work in TV. A lot of people do. So he started firing all these questions at me about poker, about odds, about, what does this term mean? What are the odds of this happening? Give me an example of a double gut shot, and I could answer them. And I saw that it kind of surprised him. And then we had this really great conversation. And then I was able to, work on high stakes poker, and then the World Series with him, and now the Super High Roller Bowl with his company as well. And, I was able to be the person at the American Poker Awards earlier this year to do the speech to give him a Lifetime Achievement Award. And it was so meaningful to me because I adore him and his whole family. Like, I have an enormous amount of actual affection for these people. He's so good at what he does. And it was very cool, kind of full circle for me.
And another thing you've been very much associated with for the last number of years is the WSOP. Could you tell us something about your experience working with them?
Oh man, yeah. It's my favorite. I love that job, man. A few years ago, we started doing the break desk during the main event final table. And that was incredible because I'd been the sideline reporter, which is a cool job and I really love it. But to have them say, you know what, we really think you can carry these 10, 15-minute segments on your own. We think you can kind of wrangle Negreanu and Hellmuth into some kind of order and keep the segments flowing. We trust your abilities to do that. They have continually pushed me to do new things. And that for me is just incredible. This year, we're doing the stream all the way through. So we're doing break desk all the way through, not just the final table. So I'm going to have an enormous amount of work to do between that and the sideline responsibilities. But I love the idea that it's a challenge. Like, I don't even know, what is this, like year 7 maybe for me, or 8? I'm not sure. And it's so exciting that I get to have a new challenge. I love working with those guys.
But that really plays into your strengths as well, Cara, because, there is something, like, I think we all recognize, it kind of sucks doing those bust-out interviews. You get them and you're basically getting a completely deflated human being who hopefully is being somewhat stoical at the moment, but he's probably wearing his disappointment on his sleeve, him or her, of course. And you do, like, there's only so much you can get out of a person in that spot. Whereas with the break desk, you have much more room to, really, like, expand on things and get into the weeds.
So true. I mean, I wouldn't miss not doing those bust out interviews because they are so hard. It's so hard to get anyone to say anything besides, I think I played well. Yeah, this hurts. And you're like, well, thanks for talking to me so I could rub it in a little bit harder.
I remember the first time I played on one of those TV shows, the thing that I was most terrified about was actually the bust out interview, because I know what goes through my head after I bust out, and I just thought if I actually say what goes through my head, everybody's going to hate me. So I spent about a week rehearsing my bust out speech.
There's usually just like a Dara O'Kearney shaped like puff of smoke after the river card is dealt. You look around, he's gone.
Yeah, because I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to talk to anyone. And the World Series is coming back to Europe this year after a break last year. Are you going to be involved in that?
I'm not sure if it's set yet, but I am definitely going to be there. I work with 888 now as well, and so clearly I'm going to be there either working or playing and kind of being an ambassador at the same time. So, I'm curious to see how that all pans out.
That's pretty good. Yeah, and I think you were at an 888 event in Dublin late last year. I wasn't in Dublin at the time, but I saw the publicity for it. How did that go?
It was really good. It was fun. The Fitzwilliam card room had me come over, and they wanted to do a TV show about their main event, their winter festival. And so we did that, and it was like the first time that they had done television, and it was the first time that they had, kind of tried to make this really big thing happen. And it was kind of fun to be there and see the groundwork being laid and this very grassroots kind of thing happening. And yeah, considering that, I just kind of finished, I think at that point, I'd just done the final table for the main event at the World Series in Vegas. And then I flew back and I had a tiny bit of time off. And then I went and did this, really small, intimate card room in Dublin. And it was a cool contrast.
Well, I think we both checked that episode out because our good friend Christine Mashman, who I think is probably a massive fangirl of yours, she got wind that they mightn't be putting the show out at a certain point. Maybe there's some issue with the edit or something, and she was heartbroken. And then suddenly it was like going to be on TV the next week, and she was delighted.
Yeah, these things take so long, especially if it's the first time you're doing one. Making TV is hard. By the time you finish filming it, like you go back, and I'm not saying this is what happened because I wasn't in the edit, but if it's the first time you've done it, all of a sudden you think, oh man, I don't have a transition for this. We don't have a shot that connects that. That's when you start writing the list for the next time you do a TV show, and you're like, make sure you get all of these things. And so I'm really impressed that they put it together.
But add to that the fact that, you also do live stream. Like we did a live stream together, a couple of years ago at the Irish Open. Yeah. And there's no wiggle room then. That at least if you've got an editing team, they might be able to polish the turd. But you're just there standing maybe deer in the headlights. I know I was anyway. It was my first proper gig on a live stream. You were there. You gave me so much lovely advice. Actually, I think it was hugely heartening for me to be alongside the likes of yourself. And Mike Sexton, of course, was there, and Emmett, and everyone who was there as part of the team. Because I was a total newbie, and I think it probably showed in the first few hours. I hope I got into it eventually, but it definitely showed.
I don't know. I don't think it did. I think we all see that in our own selves so much more than other people see it. I wouldn't.
You reckon I faked it till I made it, yeah?
I think you were great.
Just in relation to the Fitz is our local card club. It's probably where I played more poker than anybody else. I can only imagine how difficult it was to film in there because it's not a very big space. I think it's actually a converted church, believe it or not. It's only in Dublin could a church end up as a casino or a card club.
I love it. And you know what? They were so kind to me. Everybody who worked there was just the loveliest they could possibly be. They treated me like an absolute star, and they just, I don't know, it was a really nice experience. I'm glad I got to do it.
And are there any more events coming up in Dublin or in the UK that our listeners might be interested in? We have a decent audience in those territories.
Nice. Yes, actually there is one, and I just double checked with my bosses over at 888, and I can't say dates yet, but I can tell you that there will be, I'm thinking there's going to be a festival, like a mini festival at the very least at the end of the year in Dublin for 888 Live, and that's pretty exciting. We've got a London festival for 888 coming up as well in October in the meantime, so yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be at both of those. I'm kind of think I'm going to go to Brazil as well in September with 888, so they're treating me awfully well right now.
You married the Italian poker player Giovanni Rizzo a few years back, and I know before and during your engagement you lived in Italy before moving obviously to Slovenia. You learned Italian, and I believe you're still learning it, and really got into the Italian poker scene. Italy's obviously one of those ring-fenced markets, although I know that there are long-term hopes that maybe some of those ring-fenced European markets, France, Spain and others might eventually share liquidity. But do you think that it would be a good thing for those markets to come together, or do you think something would be lost and there would be kind of a damage to that community spirit I've heard you talk about in the past that exists within the Italian poker kind of, fraternity or sorority?
I think that it would be, I think it's necessary. I think to have these, the shared liquidity, I hope it happens as soon as possible. It's so hard to have a poker community when people can't play online, it was a really strong community before they did the ring fence. Poker in Italy is massive, both live and it was online as well. But, when you have such a small market, it kind of just cannibalizes itself. And then there's not very much left. The games can't run very big. People can't really make a living. They have to leave the country. You know, all these people emigrate to different places so that they can still play poker and do their job online. And I think that was actually really harmful to the idea of like the poker community. And then you don't have the investment either. You don't have poker companies coming in running great live events that, you know, are sustainable. So what we need, I think, is that shared liquidity. And I really hope it happens soon.
Cara, you have a pretty big and well-respected presence on social media. One of my favourite things about you is how it's pretty clear that you have no tolerance for rudeness, like zero tolerance, and you don't mind calling people out on that behaviour whenever it happens. Last season, when talking to John Spinks, actually, whose wife Kat used to work as a dealer, we spoke in detail about the state of the game in terms of staff, particularly female staff and how they're treated. You've been in the game for over a decade now. Individual instances of ignorance by people aside, which you're always going to get, I guess. Do you think the overall behaviour has improved or disimproved?
I think that it improved a lot over time. Just the fact that we were getting more women involved in the game kind of helped. And then you kind of hit a weird point where there's a kind of backlash. And I'm not sure if this is just my point of view. Like, it could be. It very much could be. But at some point, it seems like there's this weird backlash where people are like, oh, I'm tired of being polite and being told to be politically correct, which is like the worst phrase ever besides fake news. Politically correct is just like not being a dick. Can I say that?
Yeah, yes.
I'll say not being a jerk.
Yeah,
Not
say
being a
it.
jerk to people. It's like having some thought for other people besides yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot of great people in poker. I really do. And I think there are some that do feel like they're being told to be nice in a way that they don't want to be nice. And so there's kind of a backlash, yeah.
Yeah, but by the way, as well, swear, by all means, swear as much as you like on the show. We were forced to put an explicit label on our podcast thanks to an interview with Neil Farrell about, 3 episodes ago. So, we're in the clear now. We can say what we want.
Well, you might as well use it, right? If you've got the explicit label, then I can say all the words that I want. Now I can. Now I'm being Canadian.
Those 7 banned words on cable TV, yeah, all of them.
Your Twitter handle is Cara OTR, which I believe is a reference to Cara on the Rail, a throwback to a podcast you used to do. This is our 3rd season of the Chip Race. Have you any tips for us?
Oh man, you guys are so much better than we are, or were. Keep doing it. That would be my only tip. It's kind of cool to be able to just listen to people talking about poker in a way that's interesting and funny, and their lives kind of surrounding the game as well, not just about the cards and how they fall. I think that's really interesting for me. When I do a lot of my research for when we used to have the November 9, I would spend a couple of months researching all of the players that we'd be looking at. And a lot of what I did was listen to podcasts, because you get such a different answer from someone if they know they're going to be talking to you for like half an hour than if they're just trying to give you a soundbite in a minute. So yeah, just keep doing it.
Well, it's mostly cool for people like us to get people like you on the show, and I'm really grateful for it. But before I let you go, and I don't know if you made reference to it earlier on when you mentioned getting funding for a movie together. It may not be the same movie, but I have watched a film, a 2008 movie, Sucker Punch, that you starred in, directed by Malcolm Martin, and starring global superstar Tom Hardy and Daniel John Jules. Serious cult following for that man, because I remember him best for playing the cat in the TV show Red Dwarf. Did you not think anyone would dig this up? Because I found this so easily, and I watched the movie the other night. Had you auditioned for films before? What was it like being on set with people like Tom Hardy? I guess before he really broke into being as big as he is now. And is it possible we'll see you in movies in the future?
Oh no. You'll never see me in a movie in the future. I am a terrible actress.
You weren't it. You're not a terrible actress. I'm going to be really honest here. The very first scene you were in, I don't know if it was shot chronologically, and I remember the first line you delivered, I was like, ooh, that could be a bit wobbly. And then you got really good. Like, there was a scene where you were kind of crying, and I was really impressed, to be honest. I thought it was really good.
I was probably pinching myself to make myself cry. I've got all the tricks. I'm like properly trained and no, I wasn't. It was terrible, and that's okay.
It was. No, it wasn't terrible. It was an interestingly shot film as well. It was very raw.
Oh man, you have no idea. So the way the film came together, Malcolm and I were friends. He was actually he was a commentator for the martial arts show that I did. And
so this was that movie you were talking about?
Oh yeah, this is that movie. I'm an associate producer on that film, which I'm way more proud of than the fact that I was, I played the girlfriend of one of the lead characters. It was fun. But yeah, we shot it for nothing, like almost exactly nothing. I know that they poured a lot of their own money into it. I helped them staff it, got all of the different kind of positions filled. We figured out the locations. I had never really done proper film production before, so we were all just kind of learning on the fly. And it took us, I'm not even sure how long, maybe a year, maybe 2 years to film it. So by the time we started and the time we finished, there was a big gap, and we were borrowing cameras. There was one point where we were supposed to have this camera to film the next day. We filmed until like midnight, and we were all exhausted. And then we had to start again at 8 o'clock the next morning. But by the time we come back to pick up the camera, it had been sold, someone said. So the guy we were borrowing it from, we're like, it was all a little dodgy. Nobody ever really quite figured out what happened. So he gave us this really weird, like, camera that was on the end of this long pole, and we were like, what the hell are we supposed to do with this? We have people that flew in. We had the Stranglers did the music for the film as well.
That's right, yeah.
Like, we all pulled in so many favors, and it finally came together, and I haven't seen the edit the way it is now, but I hope it's better than I remember.
You never saw your own movie?
No, I did. I watched it in a theater, a packed theater for the premiere, and that was fun, although being in the bathroom after the movie and people talking about how bad it was. One girl did come up to me and she was like, "You're not very good, but you were one of the best actors in it."
Brilliant. But to be fair, you managed, it was quite a casting coup to get Tom Hardy back then.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the other producers was friends with Tamer Hassan, who was friends with Tom Hardy. So we got him for like an afternoon, and he does one scene and he's amazing. Yeah. Who else did we get? From Starsky and Hutch, from the original Starsky and Hutch. He played Huggy Bear.
Oh, really? Wow.
Antonio Fargas, I think his name is. Yeah. Like, he's in the movie too, which is bizarre. And we had all these fighters that we'd all worked together with for years because, we worked on this Muay Thai show together. Yeah, it was good fun.
Well, look, if there's anyone out there who wants to watch the cat from Red Dwarf play a sort of Del Boy kind of character who's like a boxing promoter, I guess is fair to say. Yep. Not even like bare knuckle boxing and sort of like just street fighting, really. And also, you're pregnant for the whole movie, so you don't even get to kick some ass. That's the part. That's the bit I was expecting.
I know. We filmed one scene where I do actually manage to land a punch, but it never made it into the movie, which is unfortunate. But that silly baby bump that I ended up wearing for like a year or two as we filmed this whole thing, it gets bigger and smaller.
I did notice that as well. I was going to say that.
We're like, how many towels did we stuff under this last time? I don't remember. It was like 2 months ago. Oh, 3 towels will do. I don't know.
Well, look, I really hope that off the back of this, the Sucker Punch movie gets a little bump. It just like moves up the charts in some sort of rental market that's out there.
I wish, because I was supposed to make money on it and I never did. So.
Oh, come on. Anyone out there, definitely check it out. Or at least watch it on like twice speed the whole way through and just like stop for Kara's scenes.
Killing me, man. It is so bad. It's so bad.
It's not bad at all. Well, look, Kara, just on behalf of Dara and I really want to say a huge thank you to you for joining us for our first episode back in season 3. It's been a huge treat, a huge boon for us to have somebody such as yourself grace us with your presence. I really do appreciate it.
It's so kind of you both. You guys, I really appreciate that. That's so nice.
And all the best with the WSOP coverage, of course, as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for making everyone go out and rent that movie, because that's
really not going to make this year awkward and embarrassing at all.
Oh, it's going to be great. I can't wait. If please just at least like tweet me the next time somebody says I listened to the Chip Race and I found it. You can find, actually, I streamed it. I didn't even pay you money. I feel bad now already because I just streamed it online. I found it like Hack copy. So look, I'll buy you a pint the next time I see you as payment.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah, that seems fair.
You owe me now. It'll be all I ever made out of that film.
That's what you should do. So you should just collect drinks off people who illegally stream it from now on.
Okay, I'll take pity drinks. I'm all right with that.
Look, thank you, thank you so much. Genuinely brilliant.
I appreciate it, guys. All the best.
Thanks, Cara.